Okay, let's start. Thank you for coming up. All people on YouTube, thank you for watching. So, as you can see, presentation is still loading. It's GIF heavy. So, if this special slide will not load, I will cover it up. In CDPR, we have inside joke about how many engineers you need to start a presentation. It's never enough. So, I'm Kacper Kościeński. I'm lead programmer for Gwent. And today, I will talk about scaling Unity for big projects. Please take into the consideration that today I will talk about editor time exclusively, not about runtime. So, first, I will give you a background of Gwent project. Then, I will talk a little bit about upgrading Unity, making builds and the build system. Then I will talk about sharing assets, sharing tools and code across projects. Then I will talk about assets themselves, how to handle big assets, how to handle a lot of assets. Then I will talk about authoring and bringing quality throughout the life on an asset and throughout life of a project. Then I will put everything together, that what's missing in Unity editor, and then I will sum up everything. And then hopefully there will be time for questions. So what's Gwent? First, let's see some trailer that we released for incoming iOS release. So Gwent is a card game where your choices, where there are choices and consequences, and your skill, not luck, is your greatest weapon. We have 4 rows of combat and awesome graphics. We support 4K resolutions in all platforms, and we worked very hard to deliver best player experience possible without compromises. From the perspective of developing the game, Gwent have over 100K files. Build size is 3 to 4 gigabytes, depending on the platform and if you're using 4K assets or not. Raw assets themselves takes 60 gigabytes. And we have broad range of platforms, including PC in China, where some assets are swapped, consoles, incoming iOS, and then Android. Also, when I talk about Gwent, most of the problems and solutions were going also in Thronebreaker, The Witcher Tales, which is a single-player campaign in World of the Witcher, and gameplay elements from Gwent. So this project was even bigger. It has over 850K files, 12 gigabyte build, and over 140 gigabytes of raw assets. And we cover PC, PC in China, and consoles. So, while developing those games, over 100 people worked on them directly in the development team. And this does not include all the supporting teams like IT, DevOps, GOG, and so on. And this is one of the biggest Unity projects that we are aware of. Let's talk about upgrading Unity. Who had problems while upgrading? Please raise your hands. Oh yeah, a lot of people. Yeah. So basically, it is a horror. So first, you have API changes, which is normal to software upgrades. Then you have serialization changes, which means all those assets I mentioned have to reserialize. Then you have different random changes that are going from nowhere. You have to cover all platforms, not only in editor, but also in builds, in runtime. You have to wait all the time for re-importing, and I mean all the time. For example, Thronebreaker, when we were trying to make iOS build, took over 36 hours to re-import. When you have new features, a lot of them are not working, or they don't work as you would suspect, or they're crashing editor at this very important time, or they cause crashes in runtime. And you have to update editor on all PCs. So if you have 50 developers, it means 50 updates on all those machines. So what's the solution for it? Well, there is no good solution. It's still a pain. But if you stick to LTS, it's much easier. Basically, there shouldn't be API changes, serialization changes. Usually, you don't have to re-import. And what we do is that we only upgrade those on build machines, not on user desktops. So it's less painful. However, if you are upgrading between LTSs, then you have a lot of problems. So our way of dealing with that is to create separate branch, copy everything there, have dedicated team that will cover all the problems. We are checking on all platforms, editor time and runtime, so QA is involved. We're preparing our build system, so when all the assets are submitted, there is only one submission, and build system will use this Unity version. We support their all possible Unity versions. Prime the cache server, so when people will get to work, everything will be ready. Schedule it in calendar. That's very important. Gwent is a live game. We have updates monthly or more often, so we have to find good time window to cover it. And what really works for us is deployment during the weekends. So on Friday, 4 p.m., we say, bye-bye, have a nice weekend, and we start deploying the changes. So then the dedicated team have those few days so they can cover all possible problems. So I've mentioned build system, and let's talk about builds. So builds are very problematic. They're complicated. Unity does not provide one button to build. They're slow. There is a lot of assets, and you have to go through them. They're heavy. If you start to build on your own machine, you cannot do anything else. You have to cover all the platforms, and usually it's not possible. Not everyone have all the SDKs, or you cannot build iOS on Windows. All of those needs maintenance. Unity API is quite basic. There is not everything covered there. And platform switch is very time consuming. So you cannot cover a lot of platforms on the same machine. And that's legitimate time for slacking off if you're waiting for build. Especially in our case, in our release pipeline, we're relying on builds very heavily. So at some point, every change that is going to be in the release build is going through QA with custom build. So solution for this is dedicated build system. So you have one button deployment. Anyone can start the process. It's fast. It's stored. So if I make a build, I can share it with you. It's automated. It covers all the platforms. And it's done on a remote machine. So when I'm waiting for a build, I can at least watch YouTube. And it integrates Unity build pipeline. In Gwent, in CDPR, we have our own web-based custom solution where everyone can trigger any process. We have over 24 processes per stream. Most of them are for caching. And it's not only for builds. So if you have any heavy task, like copying a stream or submitting builds to external vendors, it's a good place because the build machines can waste time. You cannot. So we have a list of processes. That's not all of them. And then when you click Start, you can choose some options. So important options for us are the change list that is source for the build. Usually it's latest or head, but you can specify maybe you want to make a build from yesterday. Also, we're relying heavily on shelves, so custom changes that are not submitted. But thanks to that, we can check, does it make sense? Is it passing QA, and so on. From Unity Unity editor perspective, first we build asset bundles. So that's a separate process where we update version control system to the latest. Then we activate Unity license. That's very important. In all processes on build system that use Unity, we first activate and then deactivate licenses because we had a lot of problems. And that's the way to solve this. Then we copy asset bundles from network storage to local machine, build asset bundles locally, and copy them back to network storage. The reason is for caching purposes. Basically, how Unity build asset bundles is it checks all the assets that will be included in this bundle. It creates hash, and it compares it with already existing bundle. If the hash is the same, it will not build this file. If it's different, then it will build the whole file. And while copying, we check for binary differences, and we check for missing files, and if there's too many files, we delete them. So now we're ready for building client. Again, we update the version control system, we activate Unity, we copy asset bundles from network storage to local. We build asset bundles locally, so if there are any changes, specific changes that you want to have in the build, they're there, and then we build client locally and copy to network attached storage. And the biggest problem is caching. So as I've mentioned, importing times and platform switching is not an option. So for every platform, we have separate perforce workspace, which means for every platform, we have a copy of a project. And we use this technique for asset bundles. Okay, now let's talk about sharing assets, tools, code, whatever. So usually you have not only one main project, but also a few others. And some tools you want to reuse, and you don't want to just copy them because it's hard to sync them. And basic rule, do not repeat yourself, applies here. So the solution for this is Unity Package Manager. It's similar to Node.js Package Manager. It has no runtime overhead. However, it's limited to string size. While building a package, you cannot exceed the string size. At some point, the package becomes a string, so you're bounded to 2 or 4 gigabytes. You can host it on dedicated server or locally on the file system. So in Gwent, we have a custom Verdace server, which is hosting our packages and downloading and caching Unity packages. Also, we use local packages. So in your project, in packages manifest.json, you can have custom entry where you can specify which package you want to reuse. For voiceovers, we have a sub-project for every language, and we don't want to just copy the building asset bundles code, so we reuse it that way. Sorry. Yeah, let's talk about assets. As I've mentioned, there is a lot of them. And Unity is working very, very slow when you exceed some amount of assets. For us, it was around 200K. Add to this your custom scripts. So then Unity is just not responding, and literally you just open the project, you click, the edit menu button, and you have to wait. And then one of the problems that is very present is misclicks. So let's say you want to reorganize assets, you want to move one folder to another, and you drag and drop it, but in the wrong place. It can take 1 or 2 hours to do this, and then you think, okay, I'm over it, but no, now you have to revert it and do it correctly. So it's even more time. Import times can kill you totally, like for videos. To re-import videos for Thronebreaker, it's literally 2 days. I already mentioned textures on iOS. Also, you want to stop dependencies between subsystems. For example, VFX artists shouldn't use textures from UI sprites. Reason being, it can cause problems while building, and it can even cause certification failure when you're submitting to Microsoft or Sony. So again, with voiceovers and lip syncs, in Gwent we have over 70K files, in Thronebreaker over 300K files. With videos, 20 for Gwent, 200 for Thronebreaker, and even if you have one video, it will take a lot of time to import it. Solution is very easy. Just move the files outside. So when you have no files, Unity is behaving. You have no import, you don't have to wait. And you don't have dependencies, only one direction dependency, usually via code. So how to do it? For text assets, which is pure binary or pure text, in runtime, you read those from streaming assets path using asset bundles, streams, zip, whatever. In editor time, you just replace the path to the different project, and we use file read all bytes or file read all text, and it works really well. For videos, it's the same, except in editor, you replace the URL. So now it's pointing to local files. And it behaves as it should be. You have you play videos in both runtime and editor time. For textures, it's harder because usually you need to see them somehow, or you want to keep references. So for example, UI, you want all the prefabs to have references to sprites. But it's still viable for some kind of resources, usually where you have some kind of paging solution. So you have the same kind of assets, and you have a lot of them. When you want to move assets with dependencies, it's a little bit harder. So all of the assets I've mentioned, text assets, binary, textures, videos, they don't have dependencies. They're very simple. But if you have dependencies and you want to move them away, the viable solution here is to pack them in asset bundles, but then you have to sync them depending how you define those asset bundles. Is it one big or more smaller bundles? And it's a lot of work. In addition to that, if you have custom code, you have to distribute it because code is not actually serialized. It's only the class name and the hash of it in the asset bundle. So you can have custom DLL and distribute it across the project, or use Unity Package Manager to do that. In Gwent, we thought about moving cards away from the project. So we have over 900 cards. But because of historical reasons, we didn't have the possibility. Now we can do it, but now it's kind of working, so we're thinking about it. Okay, let's talk about quality and authoring your assets. So again, you have a lot of assets, a lot of people. You can have visible changes that are not visible, or changes that can be forgotten throughout the time. You can change your standards, and something that was really good quality 2 years ago, now it's not as good. Also, you have to meet standards on consoles, on different platforms. And you have to check out for different regions. So, for example, for China, or in videos, we have also graphics of input controllers. So for Japan on PS4, we had to switch the assets there. And this is the slide that is still loading. So first solution is custom tool. And custom tool is good when you have well-defined process. It's not the best when you're prototyping, and it takes a lot of time to develop it. However, it can fulfill your needs 100%. In Gwent, for cards, we have two things, card data and card view. One is related to logic, and second is related to art. And for card data specifically, we have custom browser and workflow and whole pipeline. As you can see here, all the check marks on the green are done by QA. We alter all the changes that are tied to data version. Data version is card data that is version, basically. And this is example of how you can check one card data. All those data are stored on a separate database, and everything is included in the pipeline. So you can take one card, you can lock it exclusively for yourself, you can have your own changes only for yourself, and so on. For card view, we have a little bit different solution. So of course we have browser, and we have few types of assets. So standard texture is for flat cards, and premium texture and prefab is for those animated cards. Also there is UI sprite, and there may be a difference for China. So as you can see here, this card is different for global and for China. Also, for card art or card views, we have different kind of tests. So any card data can be tied to any card view. And during the build time, we check if there is data without view, because it doesn't have sense. All cards should be playable and visible to the player. If card doesn't have attached view, it makes no sense. And going around, card view is useless if it's not tied to card data. It just takes build size. And in editor time, we have a lot of tests. Most important from the build perspective are dependencies. All the rest related to assets are for runtime. And we have a tool to check them, all of them. We have over 900 cards. And as you can see, most of them are not passing. That's because we changed our standards. And now we have different regulations how cards should be set. Second solution for authoring is by using Unity Package Manager. In Gwent, we use it for shader library. So we had a problem of artists just copying shaders, modifying one value, and reusing those. So we moved shaders to under project and made a tool. That's how you see this library in the Gwent project, and here how you see it in source project. And the difference is, in source project, you can modify everything. In the Gwent project, you can just use it and search it. You cannot modify. Third solution for authoring can be done using asset bundles. Again, you move them outside, you bundle them, distribute them. You have still restrictions of dependencies. You have to distribute the code if you have this kind of stuff in those assets. And you have to somehow version them. In Gwent, we thought about moving cards for authoring purposes, but with those custom tools we have, it's good enough. So, what we are missing in Unity Editor to use Editor in big projects? And if there are Unity devs, we're watching you. So first, asset database or asset pipeline v2. It's supposed to be shipped in Unity 2019.3. And it covers a lot of topics, so it should handle the big amount of files. It should handle import times. We will see how this will go. We need proper dependency tracker with GUI and API. Right now, we need to expose dependency tracking, but only one way. We need the solution for searching in both ways. Not only what assets I'm using, but also who is using this asset. Also, what we need is some kind of dependency settings with user permissions. So, for example, shaders can be modified or added only by specific people, by tech art programmers, and so on. But they cannot be moved across the project or cannot be referenced in this folder, and so on. We need Unity Package Manager to handle big files. We need more control over build pipeline. So for making builds on consoles, there's still a lot of improvements we can do, but we don't have this API exposed. And we could save a lot of file copying across the process. And of course, we want editor to support platform switching. Especially, we cannot understand why assets like textures that have the same texture options, for example, UI, we use BC7 on Windows and consoles, and they have to re-import when we switch those platforms. That shouldn't work that way. So what we need to support big project is everything above, or workaround to support multiple projects. So, to sum up everything, when you're making big projects, and it's loading, when you're making big projects, you have to consider a few things. First, you will need to make some custom solutions, whatever it is. Tools, moving assets, and so on. The next thing you have to be aware is do not waste time of your team. If 50 people have wait 2 hours to import, that's killing of your coffee machine and a big waste of money. You have to fight for performance in editor every day. If somebody is repeating the same process and have to wait 20 seconds, it scales across the team, across the time. Also, if you have one big problem, you can divide and conquer. So you can make small problems and solve them separately. That's why you should consider using moving assets to sub-projects. You will have to make custom tools. You can reuse the Unity package manager. And you should think about moving assets outside and bundling them. So that's all what I have today. Before questions, however, we are hiring. And we have 8 programmers job openings, but of course we hire everyone across all the teams. And 3 of those job openings are actually strongly related to everything I've just said today. And if you think that this is interesting, or you have better solutions, or you want to work for Gwent, here is the link. Okay, that's all I have for you today. Thank you for listening. And now it's time for questions. Okay, there are 2 microphones. Raise your hand if you want to ask me something.
Hi.
Hi.
So thank you for your speech. And we have the same problem on our project. And I would like to ask, could you please describe a little bit deeper the process of your build pipeline on your build machines? Like, how did you run Unity editor in batch mode or in standalone mode? How did you refresh your set database on the importing assets in code? Do you have any problems with that? Because we had many of them.
Yes. So the question is about the build process and how we handle it, how we run the Unity. Of course, batch mode. We have custom build code. And the biggest problem, as you mentioned and I mentioned, is caching and importing. So we have separate processes that runs Unity during the night, for example, and import everything that is missing. Also, before we run Unity for building purposes, we just open the project with empty method call, and then during this, it will re-import everything. If needed, whatever needs import, it will be done then. And usually it closes Unity with some error code, but after this dry run, you call the Unity to build client, and it's okay. Also, we have people watching the build system, so if somebody is submitting something that is causing problems, it's reported immediately, and it's like a P0, most important priority, and it has to be solved on the fly. And there are a lot of problems. We have to cover all the platforms, import there. For example, there was at some point Unity was crashing when you had a lot of editor code. We just reduced, few classes, removed few methods, and it didn't crash. We had problems with shaders during the build time. It's an ongoing fight.
Okay, thank you. So solutions is the same.
Yes. Thank you. Any other questions?
Yeah. Hi. First, I would say one remark that you doesn't seem so happy with Unity. In the end, what I get take away. Well, that's for me. The next is this build system. So why don't, or we are talking about the Jenkins or?
So we have custom solution, but you can use Jenkins or whatever.
So custom solution written in what?
Custom solution made internally in CD Projekt Red.
Okay.
It's web-based, but the basic systems are done in C#.
Okay. And the next question is, what about the testing methodology we are talking about? We are talking about like in the QA, you mentioned the QA guy is pushing the button. Yes, it's good, not what. So like integration testing is also going on, regression?
Yes, there is a lot of tests included. So the tests regarding cards, we have a lot of them. And those are build time, editor time, run time. But you cannot cover everything there.
Obviously,
that's why QA is heavily involved. For example, we have headless clients checking logic, like playing 1,000 headless clients and checking if something is crashing, if something is not behaving correctly, and so on.
Okay. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes?
Hi.
Hi.
I have a question about asset bundles.
Yes.
You said you've copying out, building. So why you're not using the force build option?
Which is?
Asset bundles has the force build option that rewrite all previously built bundles.
Yes. The reason is time.
Oh. Yes.
It's if we select this, it will take a lot of time to rewrite everything. And the purpose of caching asset bundle is to not waste time on building them.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Yes, please.
Yeah, hello. Sorry.
Hello.
I had a question. So you said you are sharing code between Thronebreaker and Gwent using the package manager, if I understood well.
Yes.
How do you, I don't know the name, I would say, educate the team to be able to understand that the code they are doing could be used for all the other projects? Do you plan that ahead, or it's just like you see something working well and you will be like, okay, we make a package and we share with everyone?
So the process looks like TechArt have access to the source project of shader library. They make all the changes. It's reviewed by programmers, and that's all. If in the Gwent project there is new shader, then we fire the pile of woods and burn the art guy who did it.
Okay. Well, actually, my question was more related to how do you do to share codes between Thronebreaker and Gwent, like editor codes or
So how do we share shaders from the source project to the Gwent project, right?
It was more like tools, for example. Let's say you are doing a tool on Gwent that could be used also on Thronebreaker.
Yes.
How do you tell the Gwent team that did that, okay, what you are doing is interesting for us, you should do some kind of package for us and give it to us?
So packages are done automatically, and the how you embed them in the project is just you change the version number. And it automatically downloads the new package. So if you have two projects, the source project is submitting to the package manager.
Okay.
And here you say, OK, I want to use this version. This is good for me. And here you say, OK, I'm using the older version because I don't have needs to use the new one.
Okay. Thanks.
OK, thank you. Yes, please.
Yes, first of all, I wanted to say that we have the exact same problems back at Airmax, so thank you.
Yes, thank you.
I have a question about containerization and which kind of machines do you use to build your builds?
Again?
Which kind of machines do you use to build your builds? Or
so
do you use a physical machine, a VM, a
Yes.
container?
Yes, we have physical machine with Windows exclusively, and for iOS we make build on Windows in Unity that creates Xcode project, and we copy it to Mac and we build there. But those are real physical machines, not in the cloud.
Have you faced any problems with that? Like time?
Licenses.
Licenses is our problem too. I mean, we use containers, and allocating licenses is just a pain in, you know.
Yes.
Yeah, license is a problem. Please, Unity guys, take note of that.
Okay, thank you. So I have to finish. If you have more questions, I will be just outside of this room, or you can email me. Thank you very much. For YouTubers, thank you for watching, and have awesome night. Thank you.